They go to schools and choose some sort of a civic children's book, and then you go down in your robe and you read it to the children and then ask them questions. So I'm going to see what it's going to take to kind of get us started on something like that here. And then once I get the parameters, then we'll go to the district and see what they're interested in doing. As far as that goes, what the book looks like and where that might fit into some of their programming, we can go and do that. Letitia and I actually did a class from the Centers of Conscious Communication. It's kind of focused on like conflicts in the workplace, but I felt that that was applicable to some of the interactions that we have with defendants and like different ways to communicate, and different ways that maybe we can change the thinking with regard to it just being authoritarian, trying to make it a little bit more of their idea and work with them on how to pay fines, fees, those sorts of things. So that was a really beneficial class. As you know, we've got the security upgrades. Those have been really fantastic, been really happy with that. Since that has happened, we haven't had any more incidences, so that's been really great. Even just the perception with that magnetometer, it's slowed things down as far as people wanting to really get rowdy and acting out over there, so that's been fantastic. I did a Rule 3 training for the City Attorney's Office and police records. Jackie and Ginger and Heather came over from the City Attorney's Office to kind of go over those. That changed, I think it was March of last year. The Supreme Court kind of made some adjustments to those rules, and so they set down the parameters, and so we just got everybody on the same page. We'd been operating under those rules, but there was some confusion because they've had some staff turnover at PD Records, and we've had some staff turnover, so we just wanted to get everybody back on the same page, and so we went through a training on that, and that was really beneficial for everybody to make sure that they understood exactly within that rule what they were looking with as far as the records end of things and how that should be, because it was a really pretty drastic rule change. Instead of it being a straight amendment through the police department, now it has to go through the city attorney's office, and so it complicated things as far as our processes, so we just needed to make those adjustments and make sure that everybody was on the same page. Letitia and Jackie and I did a presentation to the 3rd grade class at my son's school, and so we did that via Zoom, and they just basically wanted parents to volunteer and to go in and talk about their jobs, and I thought it would be a good opportunity to not just have me sit up there and talk to them, but have kind of the whole part of the judicial system up there, so that we had the prosecutor. Jackie got to answer some questions, Letitia got to as far as the administrative end on the court side, and then I answered some questions with regard to exactly what I do and how that functions, and then how we all function together. So that was really fun. They asked a lot of really great questions, and my son came home and said that we were one of the best presentations. I mean, I think he has to tell me that, right? But it made me feel good anyway. So I have another Governor's Council for Impaired Driving. I don't know if the 2 new members know that I'm on that board for the governor, and so I attend those meetings quarterly. So I've got another one on the 7th of December, which I'll attend. They do those all virtually, so. And then we're going to start now that I'm kind of back in the swing of things, we're going to start working on our jury processes, getting some education out there, updating our jury questionnaire, getting things on the website, allowing people to go in and fill those out on the website, and then them just being, dumped into an email folder so that we have all those right off the bat, just kind of streamlining that process. So that's one of the main things we're going to start working on here in the next couple of months. So we're going to get the state has a new basically online system that's really nice, and so we're not going to go to that extent, of course, but we're going to try to streamline our process to somewhat fall in line with theirs. So, but that's all I've got for now. So, do you have any questions?
Any questions for the judge?
I do.
Yes.
If I may, how do you feel overall that things have calmed down? Obviously, so you like the cohesiveness in your office. Letitia's been a great addition, obviously. So yes. Things are better overall for you.
Yes. Yeah, she's fantastic. We work well together. I go in sometimes several times a day, just to kind of bounce ideas off depending on what the things that I'm working on my end. When I initially went to her with this like outreach sort of thing for the community, that's been something that she's wanted to do for a number of years. And so she was all game for that. Jumped at the chance when I asked her about the third grade presentation. So just, she's very community minded, and that's, you know, with my position, I have to be careful on the things that I do. And so it's nice to know that there's the other side of the court on the administrative side, that she can do some of the things that I can't to pursue that as far as the community and making things better and more understandable. So
just as a follow-up, I'm assuming that with her help now, it's afforded you a better opportunity to be a judge, to do what you're supposed to be doing.
yeah, so I can basically, these classes, I love the classes, I love the being involved in the judicial college. There's just tons of classes out there that you can go to get better ideas, and seems like the law is evolving, you know, every single day. And so to keep up on that, I think it's super important, and even have those refresher classes, you know, because, you know, it's been 12 years since I've taken evidence. So, you know, just having those refreshers is very beneficial, and that takes up a lot of time. You know, by the time we do the classes and the homework and all the readings and everything, it's been fantastic.
Cool.
Steve?
How's your caseload been? Is it going up, down, about the same?
I think we're stable with what we have been. I mean, we have a big caseload. We have about 9,700 cases a year that goes through, which is comparable and more than a lot of the circuit courts in the state. So we've got a pretty heavy caseload, but I wouldn't say it's going up right now. I think it's pretty stable with where it's been. We, you know, reduced things down while I was gone, just so that it didn't bury Judge Hand with the other things that he has. So it went up initially just to kind of cover the increase, because we set him out a little further than we normally would. So we run like a 45-day timeline. You can go up to 180, but we try to keep it right around that 45 just in case we have any hiccups. And I'd say we were about 60 while I was gone, so.
Okay. Anybody else? All right. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate you, Judge.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Judge.
Letitia. Appreciate it. All right, moving along, budget calendar. Carter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, good evening. Believe it or not, this is essentially the first step to reinvigorating the budget process. This, of course, would be the calendar that lays out the steps that we take for fiscal year '24 and move into that planning development process. I do like to run it by all of you so that you know exactly which steps we're taking, the timing for those steps, and how you all will be involved all along the way. One example that you'll note in your calendar is with respect to utility discussions that are coming up here before the end of the year, that's for sure. And of course, as you know, that's a pretty detailed, dense discussion as it relates to the management of those enterprises. Beyond that, I'd be happy, Mr. Mayor, to turn some time over to Jill to hitting the other high points and any questions that any of you would have.
Jill.
Thank you. Mayor, City Council. Actually, Carter hit a lot of the high points already. There are 2 additional items on here which you guys did not see on your calendar last year because they were not ready at that time. So you are actually going to see on here our prior audit is complete. That date is December 31st per statute, and we are going to hit that deadline this year, which is amazing. You'll also see January 24th. This is going to be for the Finance Committee. The auditors will meet with us and present the audit to the Finance Committee meeting. Other than that, the calendar is very similar to what we did last year. We do have May 22nd and May 24th, which is on either side of one of your work sessions. So you're going to be able to meet with everybody and talk to us about the budget during those times. It's a Monday and a Wednesday, so just put that in your calendar. Other than that, I don't have anything else. I don't know if you have any questions.
Any questions on the budget calendar? Anything that's on there that we need more detail? Carter, do you have anything else?
I don't think so.
All right, thank you, Jill.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Okay. Think that actually wraps up our pre-meeting. Oh, no, it doesn't. We have the agenda review. Do you have anything, Carter?
I really don't, Mr. Mayor. Tonight, of course, will be the time that we talk about the first reading of the non-discrimination ordinance, as well as the alarm ordinance, and
Which, by the way, if you were able to read the chief's report, those are up 30%, the false alarms. And I mean, we have 92% of all alarms are false, and now they're up 30%. So I think this ordinance is right on point and right on time.
I agree. Kyle?
Thanks, Ray. I noticed it's on the very back page, so we haven't set a date for it, but the detox funding discussion. I was just curious, when do we anticipate getting that first payment? I imagine we're having that discussion before then. My line of question.
well, Mr. Mayor, Councilman, I'm not aware that we have docketed that position. If you found it on the back page,
very back,
we have
so.
not docketed it yet, and I'm a little concerned about docketing it this calendar year, given the way our work sessions are going right now. So, but in terms of your question with respect to the timing of the payments, do you mind if I defer to
Please.
Mr. Henley?
You bet.
He's been really helpful in that process.
Hey, thank you. We actually have received some correspondence from the law firm that's been retained to handle the distribution of these tens of thousands of checks that will be going out all over the country. And they had some language, though, in their agreement to enter their website that we didn't like. And there were two provisions, and one of them they cleared up for us, and they said, you don't have to indemnify us. Which was in 3 different lines. And the other one was that they had the right in their repertory language to change our data, and that we would agree to that. And I said, well, tell me why you want to do that. Why would we do that? What are we at risk of doing if we in fact agree to do that? And we've not heard back from them on that question. So we are kind of a little bit still waiting on actually that process. I haven't heard of anyone else getting it, but they should be coming out soon. Maybe something called ahead, the box at the bottom of the page. They've already received theirs, but some of the language, which I thought was pretty severe with respect to our rights, your rights, and cities' rights. I just didn't feel comfortable letting it pass.
Nice catch, Mr. John.
Paul Goodrich, thanks for the information, John. On the off chance we do receive some sort of reimbursement before the beginning of the year, before whenever we schedule this discussion, are we just setting that money aside in some sort of a holding account or something?
Right. Yeah, Mr. Mayor, Councilman, that's exactly what I would suggest.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Do you have something, Jay? Anybody else? Agenda review? So tonight, I don't expect the non-discrimination ordinance to have a ton of people, but I do want to be aware, just if we do have a lot, I certainly will be trying to maintaining, as well as the vice mayor will help me, trying to maintain keeping people moving along and not repeating themselves. I don't suspect that we're going to have the number. I mean, I don't see a whole lot at this point. I would just suspect that to be more in the second and the third reading to have more people, but just to make sure that we'll continue to keep that level not only of decorum, but also the level of moving things along as we can go as well. So just want to make sure everybody knows that I'll keep that moving fairly along, but respectfully, because we want everybody to speak their mind as well, so. Anything else, Carter?
No, sir.
All right, well, got about 10 minutes or so.
Go ahead, please,
Of course.
Second.
Yep.
Might not be too bad. I said it might not be too bad.
Yeah.
Jackie Brown's law here, right on the river. That's where we're gonna be for, just until council's over, then.
Good evening. Before we begin, I would like to remind everyone to please silence your cell phones. And also that council meetings are televised and can be viewed on cable channel 192. All of the members are present. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The chair would entertain a motion to approve by minute action the minutes of the October 4th, 2022 regular council meeting as published in the Casper Star Tribune on October 19th, 2022.
So moved.
Moved by Councilmember Cathy, seconded by Councilmember Sutherland. Any amendments? Please cast your vote. Please record the vote.
All members voting aye, the motion passes.
Chair would entertain a motion to approve by minute action the minutes of the October 4th, 2022 executive session.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Vice Mayor Nell, seconded by Councilmember Eganbretson. Any amendments? Please cast your vote. Please record the vote.
All members voting aye, the motion passes.
Chair would entertain a motion to approve by minute action the November 1, 2022 bills and claims as audited by City Manager Napier.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Councilmember Pollock, seconded by Councilmember Eganbretson. Any abstentions? Please cast your vote. Please record the vote.
All members voting aye, the motion passes.
Now is the time that we invite anyone in the audience who wishes to speak with the council to come forward. As stated on the first page of the agenda, we do ask the following. Please state your name and address, direct all the questions and comments to the mayor and only the mayor. No personal attacks on the staff or on the council will be tolerated. Council will not respond to personnel matters. Those will all be referred to our city manager. Questions posed by speakers may or may not be responded to by council members. Presentations are limited to 5 minutes, and any duplication of speakers will not be allowed, nor any time extensions. Please note that public hearings and ordinances each have their own comment period, so please hold those comments until we reach them. So if anybody would like to come up. Last call. Okay, moving on. Please read the consent agenda titles.
Establish November 15th, 2022 as the public hearing date for consideration of 7A1A transfer of ownership for liquor license number 36 from Urban Market Wines LLC, doing business as Urban Bottle Wine and Spirits, located at 410 South Ash Street, to Occasions by Corey LLC, doing business as The Drinkery, a modern bar plus venue by Corey, located at 410 South Ash Street. 7A1B, an ordinance approving a vacation replat, subdivision agreement, and zone change for the Pasadena addition.
Thank you. The chair to entertain a motion to by minute action, establish the public hearings just read.
So moved.
Moved by Councilmember Ingebretson, seconded by Councilmember Kathy. Any abstentions or nay votes? Councilmember Pollock.
I'd like to abstain from item 7A1A, please.
Any others abstentions? Okay, please cast your vote. Please record the vote.
With Councilmember Pollock's abstention noted and all others voting aye, the motion passes.
I now declare the public hearing open for the consideration of an ordinance regarding private intrusion alarms. Mr. City Attorney, do you have any exhibits?
Thank you, Mayor. Tonight we have two exhibits for this ordinance. Exhibit number 1, correspondence from Keith McFeeters to J. Carter Napier dated October 6, 2022. Exhibit number 2, affidavit of publication of notice, a public hearing date as published in the Casper Star Tribune dated October 26, 2022.
Thank you. Mr. City Manager, do you have a report?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. The council and staff have had the opportunity to talk about this concept for quite some time now. And pursuant to your feedback, we feel like we've got a draft that potentially would be reflective of your will concerning this matter. As council is aware, we have had some 1,200 private intrusion alarms a year and another 133 holdup or panic alarms in the same period of time. However, what's more concerning is not necessarily only the fact that the vast majority of those alarms that require police response are typically false. We also have what I would consider a dramatic increase with respect to their use from year to year. And as a matter of fact, as you probably noted in your memo, that statistic looks to the tune of just over 36% over last year with respect to those alarms being incurred, and probably very similar results as it pertains to whether or not those alarms are false or not. The proposed ordinance that you have for your consideration, starting in first reading potentially this evening, would be that of adjusting our ordinance so that indeed we may have some impact in terms of reducing the efficacy or the lack thereof for these alarms being used throughout the community. I certainly have appreciated the chief's effort to reach out to stakeholders in this matter, to gain their feedback and input and so forth with regard to the draft that you have in front of you tonight. And so with that, Mr. Mayor, we would hope that council would hear the public input and give staff direction leading toward hopeful, favorable approval by this body.
Great, thank you. Council will now listen to public comment. Public hearing comments are limited to 5 minutes and no duplication of speakers will be allowed. At this time, I would ask those individuals who wish to speak in favor of the issues related to the ordinance regarding private intrusion alarms to please approach the lectern. And those who wish to speak in favor of this ordinance. Good evening.
Scotty Lehner, 1622 South Elm Street. I'm the general manager at Comtronics, and I've worked there for 26 years. We understand the drain that false dispatches have on the resources available to the city. False dispatch reduction is a very big deal in the alarm industry. There are groups like the Security Industry Alarm Coalition, which help bridge the gap between law enforcement and the alarm industry. They do that via education and training. They've helped write ordinances all over the country, and they have shown that the false dispatches have been reduced as a result of these ordinances. By changing behavior of alarm users, alarm companies, and law enforcement, you can see a drastic reduction in false alarms. So I've seen a copy of a draft of the ordinance, and I'm very happy to support the ordinance.
Any questions? Okay, great, thank you. Any others who wish to speak in favor? All right, at this time I would ask those individuals who wish to speak in opposition to the issues related to the ordinance regarding private intrusion alarms to please approach the lectern. Anyone that wants to speak against? Okay, there being no others to speak for or against the issues related to the ordinance related to private intrusion alarms, I now declare the public hearing closed. Please read the ordinance by title only.
An ordinance repealing and replacing ordinance number 16-97 codified as chapter 8.08 of the Casper Municipal Code.
Thank you. The chair would entertain a motion to approve on first reading the ordinance just read.
So moved. Second.
Moved by Councilmember Cathy, seconded by Councilmember Pollock. Discussion.
Please.
Vice Mayor.
Thank you, sir. Just for public information, 1,200 calls, and we just got a report from our police department that those are up 30%, which by my calculations is another 360, which will put us to almost 1,600 calls, of which 99.2% of are false. So we're not telling you not to have an alarm at your home, and those are the emails that I'm getting. Why is the city after money? Why can't we have an alarm at our house? You can. It just needs to be operating properly, and you need to work with whoever it is that supplies your alarm, because they'll be fined as well, and that's in the ordinance as well. So we don't want you to not have an alarm. We just want it to work properly. 99% of 1,600 calls are false. We've got to do something about it. So that's where we're at.
Any other discussion? Yeah, Councilmember Gamroth.
Thank you, Mayor, and thanks, Vice Mayor, for the info. The only thing I would add to that is I've fielded several comments from people that were worried this would affect their Ring doorbell and other systems. This is only if you have an alarm system that's tied to the dispatch center. It has nothing to do with your own privately monitored Ring doorbell systems and other similar ones. So just important for people to recognize. Thank you.
Good point.
Good point, thank you.
Any other discussion? Okay, any amendments? Please cast your vote. Please record the vote.
With all members voting aye, the motion passes.
I now declare the public hearing open for the consideration of an ordinance amending Chapter 9.08, Offenses Against the Person. Mr. City Attorney, do you have any exhibits?
Two exhibits, Your Honor. Exhibit number 1, correspondence from John Henley to J. Carter Napier, dated October 21, 2022. And exhibit number 2, affidavit of publication for notice of public hearing date as published in the Casper Star Tribune, dated October 24, 2022.
Thank you. Mr. City Manager, do you have a report?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. This too is a body of work that the council has been evaluating for some time, the idea of which was brought forward a number of months ago by your advisory committee from the LGBTQ community. Without a doubt, that very committee has had a lot of input and participation in the development of the proposal in front of you tonight. We too have taken a lot of lead from ordinances that are out in the state already that have been passed in other communities, and I would suggest that the ordinance you have in front of you is a bit of a hybrid of all those that you probably have seen yourselves as well. The city attorney's office has put a bunch of time into putting together the language that you have in front of you, the details and technicalities of which I would be poor to try to address for you this evening. So with that, Mr. Mayor, I would defer back to all of you or any other discussion you'd want to have in addition with the city attorney as you enter into this public hearing phase this evening.
Thank you. Council will now listen to public comment, and public hearing comments are limited to 5 minutes and no duplication of speakers will be allowed. Before we begin, and I ask for people to come up to speak for or against, while this is also certainly a conversation that we'll be having, my hope is that it will remain civil, with decorum, with the level of having a conversation based upon respect of people with different views, and any of those will not be tolerated in these chambers. Second, we want to make sure that there are no duplication of statements. So please, if you're going to make a statement, please make sure that it is different than what your previous person may have come up and said. At this time, I would ask those individuals who wish to speak in favor of the ordinance amending Chapter 9.08, offenses against a person, to please approach the lectern. Those who wish to speak in favor. Mr. Sweeney, good evening.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, Pat Sweeney, 951 North Kimball. And I just want to speak in favor in your continued good work. I feel this was difficult at best at the state level. And a number, I think there's Cheyenne, Laramie, Jackson, I'm probably missing somebody, but to add Casper to that, I think it's, people don't necessarily think of it as a actual employment and economic diversity issue, but there are employers out there today, especially in the tech sector, as Cheyenne has seen, that are very interested in laws or ordinances like this. And if they can't come from the state level, we will be probably the last, if ever, to pass anything in regards to bias-motivated crimes. And yet we have federal laws that are named specifically after Matthew Shepard. So I totally appreciate this. I appreciate the leadership of the council taking a look at this, the community, our good city manager, and definitely Chief McFeeters for all of his work as I tried to work through this on a state level and to gain a better grasp of our laws. And of course, our good city attorney. So with that, I appreciate your support in moving this forward. I'm sure it's not without controversy, but all good things seem to be that way these days. So, but I appreciate your efforts and your work. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Sweeney. Any questions for Pat? All right, thanks, Pat. Any others who wish to speak in favor? Okay. At this time, I would ask those individuals who wish to speak in opposition to the ordinance amending Chapter 9.08, offenses against the person, please approach the lectern. Any of those who wish to speak in opposition? Good evening.
Good evening. Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I am Keith Nackbar, attorney at law, 123 West 1st Street, Suite 205. I am speaking on behalf of myself and perhaps other businesses and individuals with similar concerns with this proposed ordinance. Up front, I want to say I am opposed to discrimination of all kinds. I think all people should be treated equally with dignity and respect. That's what I have done in my 28 years of law practice, including 18 years as a judge for this city. Members of the council, this ordinance, while on its surface seems like a good idea or the right thing to do, because I think most people are opposed to discrimination, it is absolutely the wrong thing to do. Let me start in by talking about the identification of protected individuals or protected characteristics. It does not include age, which is easily defined and protected under federal law, but notably absent from this ordinance. It protects a handful of categories, some of which are fluid, undefined, and not easily determined or proven. And yet elderly people or older people don't get protection. And we know statistically that elderly people are particularly vulnerable. The problem with the ordinance to start with is who picks the protected categories? It's really a political decision. The bigger problem is why people who fall into the chosen categories deserve more protection under the law than do the non-chosen categories. All people in this community should be protected equally from assault and battery or incitement of violence. This is the equality state. The government should treat everyone equally, not afford some people special protection. Even in these cases, proving motive will present a daunting task for the prosecution. It will require the seizure of phones, computers, far beyond what would be needed otherwise if we were just making illegal actions, not motives. Equal protection under the law is what's important, not unequal protection. Even more problematic is the city's attempt through this ordinance to regulate areas of employment discrimination, housing discrimination, and public accommodation discrimination. This foray by the city should have every business owner in this town worried and considering relocating. Employment discrimination is already vastly regulated by federal law, the EEOC, the Justice Department, and state law. It is carefully crafted through federal statutes, regulations, and case law. So I've been involved in a few of these cases over the years representing employers. Here's what happens. Someone gets fired and they make an allegation that they were discriminated against. After utilization of civil discovery tools, depositions, paper discovery, disposal of baseless claims by summary judgment through the civil process, the case is heard by a judge or jury. There's even insurance to protect employers in this situation. What you have before you is not a civil law, it is a criminal law. A criminal law is a completely different thing, and I hope you have considered how this would be enforced. There will be no depositions, no civil discovery, no written questions, no mechanism for disposing of a groundless claim, no insurance available to an employer. So if a crime is alleged, an employer would be well advised not to make any statements because they're charged with a crime. If they don't make any statements, then the only thing the prosecutor has is the alleged victim's statements. Unless, of course, they do what prosecutors do, what police officers do, and that is get a search warrant. That's the only way these claims under this ordinance can
45 seconds.
That means the police break into your business, use a battering ram if necessary, seize your phones, seize your computers, break into your file cabinets, seize your documents. That's the only way this ordinance could be enforced for employment, housing, and public accommodation. This city does not need to get into this business and should not get into this business. These areas are already regulated by federal law. Let's leave that alone. You might say, well, Mr. Nakbar, we would never do that. If we're not going to do that, if we're not going to enforce this law, we don't need another law in the books to make certain groups feel good. I would ask you to reject this ordinance in whole. Thank you. Be glad to answer any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Nakbar? Yeah.
A search warrant, as far as I'm aware, doesn't necessarily mean they're gonna come in and break down your door. It doesn't mean they're gonna ransack your business, isn't that true?
They have every right to do that, and in some cases, if the employer won't answer the questions or give a statement, which they would be advised by their attorney not to do, the police, the only way that they can investigate that is interview the alleged victim and get the information from the employer. If the employer doesn't cooperate, which they would be advised not to do by their counsel, the police would break in, seize documents, seize computers, and do what I said. That's the only mechanism they have for investigating. This is a bad idea.
Other questions for Mr. Nakbar? Okay, thank you so much. Others who wish to speak against? Good evening.
Hello, Mr. Mayor, council members. My name is Kyle True. I live on South Poplar. I wanted to speak about this. I appreciate the intent to treat all people with dignity. Treating people with dignity is a fundamental American value that I think should permeate everything that is ever done. There should never be any desire or intention to say, wait, I want an ability to discriminate somehow. But when we begin to write laws with not very clearly defined words, terms, things that are not demonstrable or provable, it becomes very concerning to me. And gender identity 10 years ago was almost unheard of. It's growing rapidly as a discussion topic nationally. There's not really a body of law surrounding this, and I don't think for Casper to step into this quickly when it's so undefined and let our courts go through the process of, well, what do you mean? When you get into a legal disagreement, you appropriately get attorneys on both sides, counsel, and they begin to go, all right, guys, these words, did you specifically violate the exact writing of this law? And what does this word mean, and what does that word mean? And that's appropriate. It's contentious and it's uncomfortable, but it's appropriate to get to discovery of justice and to lay that all out. The fluidity of gender identity, gender expression, these are incredibly difficult to define. I also am concerned that a person that a person could claim something that's not demonstrably true or false and seek a protected status above another citizen who doesn't claim something. And so I'm speaking about these gender expression, gender identity, which are ill-defined and difficult to prove, would have more protection than some other person walking down the street that has a more traditional view of life. I think that's a 14th Amendment violation. I think everyone should have equal protection. And again, everyone should be treated with dignity. I agree with that. I think this is problematic in a couple of ways. The last way is when we begin to discuss hate crimes, that's really problematic from a legal standpoint as well. I have no problem with first, second, third degree murder. Crimes of passion versus it was premeditated. I think that can be proven. There's a tremendous body of case law surrounding that. And we can tell if you were lying in wait for the person or if you dropped your hammer and hit them on the head and they died. So that's clearly demonstrable. But to speak to hate, what is hate and who's going to define hate? Does a Catholic priest who's following the traditions of a religious leader in another country, the Pope, if he says something that doesn't fit with our local thinking, does he hate or does he have a different view? And I think we may be walking into an area where we make diversity illegal and criminal. And to make diversity criminal because someone happens to think a way that's not flowing exactly with today's predominant thought in America, should that be illegal or should that be, and I'm sorry, actions based on that can be illegal. Premeditated anything, any sort of violence, any sort of overt rudeness, discrimination should be illegal. But when we begin to get into hate, how in the world do you define hate? Can a person disagree with someone and not hate them? I would suggest they could. Can someone disagree with someone and hate them? Yes, they can. So hate seems to be a separate thing and a matter of the heart, and I think very problematic to step into legally. So I urge the rejection of this bill.
Any questions for Mr. True? Councilmember Engelbretson.
I just wanted to point out that this isn't specifically on one particular group. It also is for religious, sex, and everything else. So it isn't just the LGBT community. So I just wanted to point that out. It encompasses everybody.
I agree.
And you as well.
And yes, thank you. I agree. Some of the terms in there, I'm not sure I understand what they mean, and so that's where my concern was for terms I don't understand. But I completely support no discrimination and treating everyone with dignity. I'm in. I agree.
Vice Mayor.
Thanks.
Did you read it? Did you read the ordinance?
Yes.
You did read it? So, when we drafted this and we got together, this is more about assault than hate. And if you read it, it very simply says, and I'll go through it real quick. Assault of another, assault and battery of that person, injuring, defacing, or destroying property of another, inciting imminent lawless violence against another. For me, this is about attacking people because they are different than you, or they think different than you, or they see different than you. And that's why I've supported this from day one. It's not giving a special class to anyone. It's protecting everyone. And unfortunately, in our community where you said everyone should be treated with dignity, and I agree with you, unfortunately they're not. And because they think differently, or they act differently, or see things differently, they're not being treated the same. They're being assaulted. They're being beaten. And I'm done with it. And there should be laws against it. And that's where we're going with this. And Wyoming is one of only 2 states that don't have these laws on the books. One of only 2 in the entire country. The Bible Belt, everybody's adopted it, but us. And I should have asked Mr. Sweeney what the holdup is down there and why it's been such a big deal down there. But we in Casper, we don't want that here. We want everyone to be treated fairly. We want everyone to be safe. That's what this is about for me. I just want you to understand that. And that's what it's about for all of us. We need to care about each other regardless of what they think or what they do. I'm a religious man. I have my doctorate in divinity, just like some other folks in here that I know very well. I have my religious beliefs about it. What does that have to do with protecting people and making sure that they have a safe place to live? That's what this is about for me. I'm sorry I got on my stand, but it was in direct correlation to what you'd said. And I wanted to make sure you read this because this mainly deals with assault. This is about hitting people and inciting violence against people because they're different than you. And I don't see how anybody could possibly be against this. I've read it from top to bottom. I was part of it. I helped craft it. I don't know, that's where I'm at with it.
I'll say quickly in response, a way I could be against it is that all people should be listed. And when special groups get listed, and then when we say one person gets more protection than another person, I completely agree with you in the statement that all violence against a person should be illegal and discouraged without going into the hatred motive. I think that's legally problematic.
Just as a
follow-up. And we may be the second to last state to implement this. We often brag Wyoming is what America was. And everyone that's a human should get protection without these slicing and dicing.
I agree with you, but I'm going to tell you just as an outlying example. I look at this like it's the NFL. I'm just putting it where you can understand where my thought process is. These guys suit up and they bang the piss out of each other all night long for our enjoyment. And they make millions of dollars doing it. However, if you grab that quarterback because he's weaker and he's vulnerable and you slam him to the ground, you're ejected from the game. Why does that quarterback get special treatment compared to anybody else on the field? Because he's vulnerable, because he's in a vulnerable place. And there have to be rules in place to protect people that are vulnerable. And that's what this is about. That's what it's about for me. And I'm going to stand behind it all the way to the end, just so you know. But I hope you understand where I'm coming from. People need protection. And you say they're not a special class, but they are being targeted because of their beliefs. And it's not right.
Councilmember Gamera.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mr. True, for your feedback. I appreciate it, as well as the former speaker, the former judge. I have very limited experience in the courtroom. I try to stay on the straight and narrow, so I haven't had to visit with you, Judge. So I'd consider myself pretty naive as far as the distinction between criminal, civil. I understand there's a lot I could have to learn there. I wanted to speak solely for myself as far as my reasoning for being okay with this so far. I think you bring up some good points as far as some terms that could be more, objectively defined. I think that's a worthy discussion. And so it's going to be one that I advocate that we have. But that being said, the reason I've been okay with this ordinance so far is because violence against people based on nothing but a class that I identify with. I'm going to keep citing Miss Councilwoman Pollock over there because I think she said it so great last year, I think it was, when we were discussing this. But a crime against a person based on their class is not a crime against that individual, in my opinion. It's a crime against a community of people. If you're attacking someone based on, you mentioned practicing Catholic, if you made it very clear, overtly clear, that you were attacking somebody based on nothing else except the fact that they were following Catholicism, I think that creates unfair fear amongst that community of people that they could be targeted for violence based on nothing except what church they go to. And so that's why I've been okay with it, is that it is creating enhanced penalties for crimes that are committed against not just a single person, but a community, a group of people based on the class that they identify with. This was a ordinance that was drafted and came out of the LGBT Advisory Council. And so I think that's why people tend to get focused on it. But if you read it, it's, the classes are race, color, religion, sex, sexual orientation, gender identity, gender expression, national origin, disability. There's many protected classes. It's not just LGBT. I do appreciate the former judge's comments as far as why something like age isn't included. Again, off the top of my head, I don't know what the rationale would be for that, so I think that's another discussion worth having. But that being said, I don't think we should focus on strictly the protections it offers the LGBT population. I think it offers protections for a range of people, regardless of how they classify. People should not have to feel fear of violence simply based on what church they go to, who they choose to have as their partner, what color of skin they were born with. And so that's why I've been okay with it. I just wanted to give my reasoning in case it gives you more food for thought. Thank you.
No, I appreciate that, Councilman Gamroth, and I think that's another concern I'd have, is that as we begin to slice and dice people, and instead of seeing them as individuals completely equal before the law, if we begin to slice and dice and say, you're this group, you're that group, I would suggest that every person has 10,000 characteristics that define them. And to say, well, they're a part of this community diminishes them to one aspect, which may be applicable, it may be true, but it so diminishes them. And the socialists, the Marxists, the communists who begin to put people in one group or another, that leads society into a less just society, I would suggest, and we are a nation of individuals.
Thank you, Mr. True. Oh, you're good? Okay, all right. Yeah.
Nothing? Okay.
Yeah, thanks, Kyle.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it. Any others wish to speak in opposition? Good evening, Mr. Steensland.
Good evening. Dennis Steensland, 533 South Washington. I kind of hate to follow up with these two gentlemen. They did a very good job. Ever since your first discussions on this, I've been against it. I agree with, I think it was Councilman Cathy. This can be dealt with without going through an ordinance. Had you not set up the LGBTQ committee a year ago or better that brought this all to you, now you've brought it to the forefront, and it will be a problem, I think. In my opinion, it's not a problem in Casper, Wyoming. For the older community that I'm involved in my life, this isn't an issue. I just have never liked the idea of catering to maybe, I don't know how big the community is, but it's much smaller than the population of Casper. You're maybe representing 100 people with this ordinance that brought it to your attention, got all this headlines. I relate it back to the berm situation. 12, 15 people come down, you wasted 3 months on that issue. You had 7 people take out a permit. There's probably 50 people parking on the berm that have no permit. It doesn't get enforced. I don't know how you would enforce this issue. I just think it's a terrible ordinance. It seems like this council answer to everything is to put out an ordinance. Most of the stuff I deal with, it's an ordinance that isn't ever enforced. If you want it enforced, you've got to call the city. If you want to talk to, well, the city will get it done. As far as talking to the council, it doesn't get done, in my opinion. So anyway, and I've followed the council for quite some time. I just think it's a terrible ordinance. It'll be a terrible one to enforce. I don't think it's going to stop anybody from doing whatever they're doing now. I haven't read the ordinance. I don't see it being an issue in Casper. I don't know if I'm just that naive or what, but I just think my age bracket, I hear no discussion on it. So anyway, I'm against it. I hope you don't waste 3 months on it and then have an ordinance you don't enforce. Thank you very much.
Any questions for Mr. Steensland? No? Great. Thank you, Dennis. Any others who wish to speak in opposition? There being no others to speak for or against the ordinance amending Chapter 9.08, offenses against a person, I now declare the public hearing closed. Please read the ordinance by title only.
An ordinance amending Chapter 9.08, Offenses Against the Person of the Casper Municipal Code to add Section 9.08.020, malicious harms based on race, color, religion, sex, sexual orientation, gender identity, gender expression, national origin, or disability.
Thank you. The chair would entertain a motion to approve on first reading the ordinance just read.
Second.
Moved by Councilmember Sutherland, seconded by Councilmember Pollock. Discussion. Vice Mayor.
Thank you. We can beat this all night, but I'm going to tell you, I'm very much in favor of it. We just have a group of people that aren't being treated well. And here's the bottom line for me. If you are not out assaulting someone because they don't believe the way you believe, then this ordinance means absolutely nothing to you. This is about assault. This is about assaulting people. And if you're not doing that, then it doesn't matter to you. And if you are assaulting them, then face the consequences. It's the way it goes. So I'm all about it. I'm all for it. And if there's another class of people out there then that needs this type of protection, then you come to us and we'll see what we can do to help you as well. I would, however, like to amend this somehow. Mr. Henley, I would like age to be in there. I think Mr. Nakbar brought up a really good point, and I think we do have to protect our elderly who get preyed on quite often. Maybe not you, Steve, but I would like to see that added to the ordinance because I think it's important. And I think it's what we stand for here on this council. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Pollock.
Thank you, Mayor. So I would like to just first say I am very pleased to be supporting this ordinance. I've supported the process throughout, very pleased to have worked with the LGBTQ Advisory Committee to put this together. Just a few, I think, key points. I could talk about why it's important all night, but people have places to be, so the things that I think are most important for people to understand about this. Everybody in this room has a race. Everybody has a national origin. Everybody has a gender identity. Everybody has a sexual orientation. So this does not create special classes. If you are targeted for any of those reasons, even if you are not in a minority population, you are protected by this ordinance. So there's, the notion that we're slicing and dicing or, or whatever that line of thinking is, that's not at all. Everybody's protected in some way by this ordinance. And to put, more emphasis on the point Councilman Gammuth referenced earlier, I think it really does matter. The motive matters sometimes, and that's why in many areas of the law, intent is taken into account. And the reason it matters is the reason that it's more harmful for somebody to spray paint a swastika on a synagogue than it is for somebody to go spray paint a random symbol in an alley in Casper. One of those things is property damage, which is a crime in and of itself, right? But one of them is property damage with the intent to intimidate or incite violence against a particular group of people. And in that case, It's not just the property owner who has been victimized, it's the entire set of population that shares that identity. So that is why, for me, it is more than appropriate to treat those crimes differently, because the impact is different. And when we're talking about justice, we're talking about impact and who's been impacted and what steps can be taken to rectify whatever impact was created. And, you know, in these cases, we're talking about an impact that is more severe than an impact of, you know, a crime that was not affiliated with what in this case could be considered particular bias. So, you know, this ordinance really has two parts. I won't go into the non-discrimination side of it. I'm really speaking more to the biased crime. But I think there's a lot of confusion around this notion that, you know, there's special classes of crimes now, and, you know, assault is assault is assault. And that's just simply not true. The impact is not the same, and this gives our judicial system the opportunity to take into account impacts that aren't currently attended to in our ordinance. So I'll support it tonight and at future readings, and really proud of the work that folks in this room have done to get it to this point. Thank you.
Councilmember Ingebretson.
So I agree with this, and I support this ordinance for a multitude of different reasons. I am an employer and of a real estate business. And so the things that and then also a female. And so I have had sexual harassment to me as my person. I've seen it to my tenants. I've seen things that happen daily, that happens every single day to different people for no particular reason other than it just simply happens, and it's every single day. And so for people to say that it's not happening in this community, it absolutely is. And it doesn't matter what sex you are or anything, things are just happening constantly. And unfortunately, we have to put certain ordinances in place because people cannot be nice to each other. They cannot be respectful to each other. Even when there's absolutely no reason to be hateful to another person, there is still hate out there. And people are still going to be cruel to other people just because of the way they look. So this is important, just as to say, this is not okay, period. This isn't okay. And that people need to start being a little bit more accountable and being kinder to each other. And so it's not necessarily particularly on one class, but I have seen all sorts of things. I've had probably 10 different incidences just today. So this needs to happen, and we need to start putting this in force and then start being kinder, just in general as a city. We need to be kinder to each other.
Councilmember Sutherland.
Thank you. If I could just restate everything Councilmember Pollack said, I would, but I probably won't be as eloquent. I think there are a number of comments. I mean, I guess just to first say, I 100% support this ordinance. I believe this is what's right for our community, for the individuals in our community who have different lived experiences than our own. Sometimes we as individuals have to look beyond what we as individuals have experienced to look out for other individuals who have different experiences than our own. And I think that this is what this ordinance offers our community. It offers us a way to look at somebody else and understand they might experience something different than we do, and there's a reason for us to look out for them. I think everybody deserves to feel safe here in Casper and everywhere. And I think if we can do something like this, we should do something like this. It's the right thing for the people who we live next to, who we care for, who teach our children, who look out for our family members as they go to the grocery store. I mean, we are connected, and we need to look out for one another in this way. Intention absolutely does matter, and it is a matter of the law. I mean, you said it. There is a difference, and I don't know why holding people accountable to their intention should make any of us feel uncomfortable if we're doing the right thing on a regular basis. And I think it doesn't really matter if there are 5 people here or 5,000 people here or who are affected by something that we do. I think We look at where there need to be problems that are fixed, and we do it. And it doesn't matter if it's for 100 or if it's for the entire city. Each one of our community members matters and deserves to feel safe and deserves to know that they'll be protected if they're targeted for any one of these reasons. And maybe we don't need this law. If we don't, we won't use it. But if we do, we'll have it, and I think it matters, so that's it.
Councilmember Gamroth.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you to my colleagues. I would concur with many of the points that you just made, so thank you for expanding on some of those thoughts I had. Just one more consideration that I think it's important for us to keep in mind. The gentleman that spoke earlier mentioned employers, that they should be up in arms about this, and we've actually received emails from employers in support of this. I think if you were to ask Justin Farley over at Advanced Casper, he has spoken to many organizations that express concern that we don't have something like this on the books. The stigma associated with Matthew Shepard, even 20 years later, is still something that is one of the few things that many people know about Wyoming. They know us as the state where Matthew Shepard was murdered. That's one of the only handful of things they know about us, and that we ride around horses, and one of those isn't even true. So, at least for the majority of us. I haven't been on a horse since I was like 5. So that's all people know about us, and I know from an economic development standpoint, it has been hard recruiting businesses that employ people that would see a lot of value in ordinances like this. And I don't think that's the only reason to pass an ordinance like this, but when we're talking about all of these good reasons for passing the ordinance, this is just one more piece of the formula that we have to take into consideration. One of the things that we have to balance. There's no easy, my short time on council has confirmed for me that there are no just easy right or wrong, black or white answers that we make up here. We have to weigh many different things, and the decisions that we make often have to be on a spectrum. And so, we're doing our best to weigh all of these factors. When we hear from folks like Justin at Advanced Casper, hey man, trying to recruit businesses here and they just will not relocate because this is the perception that they have of the state, and the municipalities and the state haven't done anything to address that. That's something that we have to consider. And so it's just one that hadn't been mentioned since the economics and business community got brought up earlier. I just think that's also important for people to recognize. We're hearing from business owners, we're large employers too, and the folks that are working on our economic development in the community, they're saying that this is an issue for them in their recruitment efforts, and so just something that we need to keep in mind. Thank you.
Just make sure. Yeah, Vice Mayor.
Thanks. I just, one more thing. UPS, which is a global organization, reached out to us, and they are extremely ecstatic. So you talk about one of the largest employers in the world, and they're 100% behind what we're doing here, just so you know. Also, one of the arguments I got in an email that I wanted to touch base on that I'd forgotten earlier was there's already laws against assault, so why do we need this? How many times do you see somebody that breaks the law, and I know we all know people, and then the next day they're back out on the street again, and with little to no consequence? Well, this gives the judges a little teeth now. When somebody goes and commits assault now based on that ideology, now they've got some teeth to deal with these people. And that's how we're going to, as a society, change the way people are behaving and change the way they think, and hopefully make it a kinder, safer place. I've said my piece more than enough, so, and I appreciate all of you that came to the lectern tonight. It can't be easy to go against popular opinion, I suppose, and good on you for doing so. And trust me, this wasn't taken lightly by any stretch. So.
Any others? Nope. Councilmember Kathy.
Well, as most of you know, if you saw the paper even, I am not in favor of this amendment, or this ordinance. In the second paragraph of our Declaration of Independence, it says that all men are created equal. Men was the term for the 1700s. Today, that would read all people are created equal. We also have, as Judge Nakbar mentioned, the 14th Amendment for equal protection. To me, part of this ordinance is nothing more than some of the old divide and conquer. You are trying to split up people into groups and classes, and that isn't what we're supposed to be trying to do. We're supposed to be trying to bring people together. I agree with everybody here that has said dignity and respect is what we need. You cannot legislate dignity and respect. That has to come from within. And as Councilwoman Ingebretson mentioned, if people are going to go out and hate, they're still going to go out and hate. And a $750 fine is probably not going to make them stop and think about it. I cannot support this. We have even had amongst council, you brought up the mention of age, but a couple of years ago, we as a council were all together, and me and one of the other gentlemen on council were kind of, as boys will do, bantering back and forth, and there was a comment made about, well, maybe you ought to go do something, you old fart, and somebody heard that and made a complaint that that council member was picking on me, and that cost the city a bunch of money to investigate that for nothing, because it was nothing more than a couple of guys just bantering. And so this is opening up a whole can of worms that I'm not sure we will ever get back in a can. So I will not be voting for this. And I understand everybody's position up here, and I appreciate your positions. And I understand why you're there. I hope you can understand mine.
Any others? I'm going to make my comments very short. I am going to be supporting this all the way through the third reading. And I went through this through the resolution, and it's it's not easy to have these tough discussions. Discrimination exists. It's here in Wyoming, as it is in every state. We do need conversations around that, and we do need laws, and we're not trying to legislate people's morals. You're not going to legislate people's morals, but what you can say is you can say we won't stand for discrimination or hate. So that's what our hope is with this. I know a lot of people say, well, Wyoming is the outlier. We're one of two, I think it's South Carolina or Arkansas that joins us as not having a hate crimes bill of some sort. And we're right in there with that pact, which is not something we should look as an individualistic, prideful moment. When the rest of the country chooses to see hate for hate, discrimination for discrimination, and to stand against that, against everybody, then we have to say, where are we? We're the lone wolf out there that's not standing against and saying we're going to create this. And I know Pat had struggled with that in the legislature, and it's been a bit of difficult road for him on that level and several other legislators. My hope is that while we're going to continue to have more conversations on the second reading and the third reading, and then there will be more people that will come to discuss that there will be candid conversations, but being respectful with those conversations. But I believe this council is wanting to make sure that we have a unified front to say we believe that we're not going to accept discrimination, no matter what that looks like, for anybody, whether that's based upon color, whether that's based upon religion, whether that's based upon gender identity, sexuality, what that means, that we stand against hate and discrimination. And a couple times I've heard that we just don't see it in our circles. We don't hear about discrimination. We don't hear about hate in our circles. Go talk to somebody if their color is brown. Somebody like myself who is a Hispanic and a Latino who has to face that. It is here.
And if you've never faced it, if you've never had to struggle with that, you don't know. So to sit and assume your lived experience is because you've never faced discrimination or you've never had to face that, that's a tough pill for me to swallow. And I know that there are several people up here that have faced it as well. We're doing the right thing. And it's tough, and you're going to get some hits. We're going to get those things, but this is the right thing to do. And in the end, I'm going to look my kids in my eyes, and I'm going to say, I did the right thing. And history will stand by us. Any amendments?
Yes.
Councilmember or Vice Mayor?
Thank you. I propose that we amend it to include age.
Yeah, if there's a movement, so moved. Second. Seconded by Councilmember Humphrey. Discussion.
We just check in with the city attorney on,
Yeah.
make sure that's.
Mr. City Attorney, could you advise us on that?
Yes, I'm just trying to find that, and let's state it maybe, if we can find where to put that in, the word, and just kind of state it that way, that would be great. And maybe if the amendment, thank you, if the amendment, Councilman Nell, can be made to amend paragraph 908.020, capital A, and just add the word age following the word or following the phrase national origin, then we can just add that word and not even have to add a comma behind it, because it says national origin or disability. Now it will say national origin, age, or disability.
That would work.
Discussion on that amendment. Okay. Take a vote.
On the amendment, and then you'll do.
Yes, yeah. Go ahead and vote, cast your vote for the amendment, for the Vice Mayor's amendment. Okay, please cast, or please call the vote. Sorry, I don't have my script.
With all members voting aye, the motion passes.
Thank you. All right, any other amendments? All righty. Now we're going to cast our vote for the actual ordinance on the first reading. Please cast your vote. Please record the vote.
With Councilmember Kathy voting nay and all others voting aye, the motion passes.
Thank you. I now declare the public hearing open for the consideration of the resolution certifying annexation compliance for Tract 8, Dollar Number 2 subdivision. Mr. City Manager, do you have any exhibits?
The city attorney has 4.
My apologies, Mr. City Attorney. Mr. City Attorney, please.
Oh, thank you very much. Exhibit number 1, correspondence from Liz Becker to J. Carter Napier dated October 19, 2022. Exhibit number 2, affidavit of publication for notice of public hearing date is published in the Casper Star Tribune dated August 29, 2022. Exhibit number 3, affidavit of publication for notice of public hearing date and annexation report summary as published in the Casper Star Tribune dated October 6, 2022. And exhibit number 4, Tract 8, Dollar Number 2 subdivision 2022 annexation report.
Thank you. Mr. City Manager now, do you have a report?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, I do. Pursuant to the exhibit that you have in front of you, the property owner located at 3025 Paradise Drive has requested annexation of the 2 acres as designated on your exhibit. They are interested in not only some construction on said property, but also access to city services to service the facilities that are located on the property as discussed. They are contiguous with the city's limits, and the city does have the capacity to provide those services at their cost, and accordingly, we would recommend favorable approval.
Thank you. Council will now listen to public comment. Public hearing comments are limited to 5 minutes, and no duplication of speakers will be allowed. At this time, I ask those individuals who wish to speak in favor of the resolution certifying annexation compliance for Tract 8, Dowler Number 2 subdivision to please approach the lectern. Okay. At this time, I would ask those individuals who wish to speak in opposition to the resolution certifying annexation compliance for Tract 8, Dowler Number 2 subdivision to please approach the lectern. Any of those against? Okay. There being no one to speak for or against this resolution certifying annexation compliance for Tract 8, Dowler Number 2 subdivision, I now declare the public hearing closed. Please read the resolution by title only.
A resolution finding facts pursuant to Wyoming State Statute, Section 15-1-402, regarding the annexation of 2 acres described as Tract 8, Dowler Number 2 subdivision.
Thank you. The chair would entertain a motion to adopt the resolution just read.
So moved.
Moved by Councilmember Pollock, seconded by Councilmember Sutherland. Discussion. Vice Mayor.
Mr. McIntosh, I believe this passed the planning and zoning with 100% in favor?
Yes, it did.
Thank you, sir.
Any others? Okay. Amendments? Please cast your vote. Please record the vote.
Councilmember McIntosh abstaining and all others voting aye, the motion passes.
Please read the ordinance on third reading by title only.
On annexation of 2 acres described as Tract 8, Dowler Number 2 subdivision, 3025 Paradise Drive, establishing the zoning of said parcel as C2 General Business and rezoning 8.2 acres described as the Paradise Acres Addition, 3041 Paradise Drive as C2 General Business.
Thank you. The chair would entertain a motion to approve on third reading the ordinance just read.
So moved. Second.
Moved by Councilmember Cathy, seconded by Vice Mayor Nell. Council will now listen to public comment. Public comments are limited to 5 minutes and no duplication of speakers will be allowed. Okay, any discussion? Amendments? Please cast your vote. Please record the vote.
With Councilmember McIntosh abstaining and all others voting aye, the motion passes.
Council will now consider consent resolutions. Please read the consent resolutions by title only.
10A1, authorizing a contract for professional services with Civil Engineering Professionals Incorporated for the Water System Updates and Modeling Project. 10A2, authorizing a contract for professional services with HDR Engineering Incorporated for ongoing studies, tasks, and activities regarding water rights and water supply activities. 10A3, authorizing a contract for outside city water and sewer service for Meador Environmental Consulting LLC. 10A4, authorizing a contract for professional services with Civil Engineering Professionals Incorporated for design, bidding, and construction administration services for the Wolf Creek Road improvements. 10A5, authorizing a contract for professional services with WWC Engineering for engineering services for the College Drive improvements. 10A6, authorizing an agreement with Hall's Custom Paving and Excavation Incorporated for the transit facility parking improvements. 10A7, authorizing an agreement with Casper Building Systems for the MRF door repairs. 10A8, authorizing a contract between the City of Casper and Felsberg, Holt, and Ullevig for the Casper Area Impact Fee Study. 10A9, authorizing a contract for professional services with JTL Group Incorporated, doing business as Knife River for the Drill Tower Training Pad.
Thank you. The chair to entertain a motion to adopt the consent resolutions just read.
Second.
Moved by Councilmember Sutherland, seconded by Councilmember Egebretson. Mr. City Manager, do you have a comment on any of these items?
Mr. Mayor, real quickly, the item 10A4 is with regard to the Wolf Creek Road improvements. That particular project is made possible through a partnership with the county, the portion of which they provided a number of years ago, and we are moving forward, if council approves with that, to make some major improvements on that corridor that have been long in coming. So just to make the council aware of that partnership, which I think you already were aware of, hopefully your constituents appreciate that as well.
Great, thank you. Any abstentions or nay votes on this?
I'm going to abstain from 10A4.
Okay, any others? All right, please cast your vote. Please record the vote.
Vice Mayor Nels, abstention noted, and all other members voting aye, the motion passes.
Thank you. Please read the consent minute action titles.
11A1, appoint 3 new members to Casper's Council of People with Disabilities for a term of 3 years beginning November 1st, 2022. 11A2, accept a grant from the Rocky Mountain Power Foundation in the amount of $8,000 to be used to fund elements of First Street Gateway.
Chair to entertain a motion to approve on consent minute action agenda items just read.
So moved.
Moved by Councilmember Pollock, seconded by Councilmember Egebretson. Any abstentions or nay votes?
No.
Yes.
I'll abstain from 11A1.
Okay, any others? All right, please cast your vote. Please record the vote.
Councilmember Sutherland's abstention noted, and all others voting aye, the motion passes.
At this time, we ask council members to bring forward any relevant concerns or items of interest. We'll start with Councilmember Humphrey.
Thank you, Your Honor. November is Alzheimer's Awareness Month, so I just want everybody to know that there are free memory screenings November 14th at the Senior Center starting at 10 a.m. The Health Department put out a note today that they're seeing a significant increase in flu and RSV, so just be careful out there, everybody. And I want to thank the council for the dedication and hard work that you guys have gone through with everything. I'm so impressed, and I learn something new by listening to you guys every day, so you guys are amazing. Thank you.
Councilmember Gamroth.
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you, Councilwoman Humphrey, for the kind words. In our information packet this past week, there was some figures about the life jacket program over the course of the year. So we had nearly 200 or 198 unaccounted for life jackets during the 22 season. This amounts to roughly $5,500 worth of life jackets. So I guess just I wanted to put it out there as a PSA. It's a small figure, when we're talking about the city of Casper having a $160 million or so odd budget, but these are all donated life jackets, and they're out there saving lives for people. And so I guess just reiterating to folks, if you see people using these life jackets, very respectfully and calmly, maybe call them out on that. And if you've accidentally taken one home yourself, you might consider returning it, just because those things cost money. And as we heard from the Cub Scout group earlier in the year, there's lots of people out there doing good work, trying to provide and fill up those stations. So please don't take them intentionally, and if you take them unintentionally, make sure they get it back to their spot. Thanks for everyone that contributes towards that program. We had another meeting on homelessness in our community last week, still trying to get a few key stakeholders at the table, but having some good beginning conversations. Still a little bit of dispute about how bad the problem is and whether it's getting worse. And so I guess I would just encourage folks, if you have thoughts on that one way or another, I would certainly make my email and Facebook page welcome to any sort of feedback as far as that goes. Downtown business owners are encouraged to contact our non-emergent police department line for any criminal behavior. This not only gives our police department the opportunity to respond, but also helps them collect data to create heat maps and other kind of guiding documentation to help them be more efficient with the services they're providing. So please keep city officials, city leaders, the police department clued in on what you're seeing in the community so that we're more informed as we make decisions moving forward. And then lastly, I serve as liaison to both the OYD and the DDA boards. They had a get-together last week, and so it was a good opportunity for these groups to meet and discuss shared goals. We talked about how to decorate downtown, considering the fact that our Parks and Rec department is having to pull back a little bit on some of the Christmas decorations. I think we were out there last week doing trees, but not light poles. So those groups are getting together, talking about how we can sustain some of the decorating and other things. They represent different sections of downtown, but still downtown is, there's lots of shared goals, a lot of shared vision amongst all those organizations. So I'm glad that they're collaborating and working together to achieve some, outcomes that they would both like to see. That's all and then also just we closed down Walcott Street over the Halloween weekend. That was the first time I went and trick-or-treated in that neighborhood, so it was very awesome, very community-oriented event. A little overwhelming if you get crowd anxiety, but it was cool to see so many kids out and about, and how welcoming all the people that live in that area are. I imagine it's an exhausting effort for them, but appreciate it nonetheless. Thank you.
Councilmember Ingebretson.
I have nothing tonight, thank you.
Councilmember Pollock.
Thing from me tonight, thanks.
Councilmember McIntosh.
Mayor, I just wanted to remind everybody that next Tuesday is Election Day. If you have not voted yet, please get out and vote.
Councilmember Sutherland.
Nothing from me tonight, thanks.
Councilmember Kathy.
Nada.
Vice Mayor.
Thanks, sir. Just real quick, Kadeen, thank you for the kind words. I appreciate this council more than anything, but I want the public to understand, this isn't a tough job. It's not. It's not tough to do the right thing. And as you know, in my estimation, I guess I was elected to make decisions, and I always make my decisions based on what I think is right and proper. And tonight was a perfect example. I do very much appreciate the folks that came and spoke tonight, whether it was, well, we only had the one speak against, but I really enjoy when the city and our constituents get involved in what's going on and come in and let us know where their minds are at as well. So that's always welcome. I appreciate them coming and doing that. I know that's not easy for them either. But for me, it's just not a tough job. You just try to do the right thing, and you go home at the end of the day and hope you did right by your people. So that's all I have.
I don't have anything. I didn't feel like I was quite eloquent when I spoke. I just want to very quickly, even though we disagree, and I appreciated Councilmember Kathy to sit and say, I hope you understand where I'm coming from. And I think that conversation to say that we do understand, we can disagree with that, with dignity and respect for that individual. And I think that's where this is coming from, doing this ordinance, to see the humanity in each individual. And it's easy for us to lose that humanity, and I think we have lost that humanity in government and in politics. And I think we see a brief glimpse of hope in this council as we work together, and we can disagree to do that, or we can disagree when we look at different ordinances, but also understand that we can walk away and understand that we're going to be different on certain issues, but that we can still respect each other. And hopefully the process as we go through the next 2 readings on this, we will see that as well. So incredibly proud to be a part of this council as well. The next meeting of the City Council will be a work session to be held at 4:30 p.m. Tuesday, November 8th, 2022 in the council meeting room, and a regular council meeting to be held at 6 p.m. Tuesday, November 15th, 2022 in the council chambers. A notice of an executive session to take place at this date and during this meeting was given. We have matters to discuss regarding land acquisition, personnel, and litigation. Therefore, the chair would entertain a motion to adjourn into an executive session, and at the conclusion of the executive session to reconvene this regular meeting solely for the purposes of adjournment of this regular meeting.
So moved. Second.
Moved by Councilmember McIntosh, seconded by Councilmember Pollock. There being a majority of members present and a motion to adjourn into an executive session having been moved and seconded, and that motion requiring a 2/3 majority of the council present, please cast your vote. Please record the vote.
With all members voting aye, the motion passes.
A greater than 2/3 majority of the council present voted in favor of the motion, and we are hereby adjourned into an executive session.